You know, it's interesting with SCOTUS. They're very hit and miss these days. Very hit and miss. Like sometimes you get good rulings out of them, sometimes you get bad rulings out of them, and I suppose that's how they've always been. But like, it was the idea of like the three Trump picks and all this stuff, and the conservative majorities. We were just supposed to get like banger after banger after banger decision, but instead we've been getting like good decision, shitty decision, good decision, shit decision, good decision, shit decision. Well, this is one of the good ones. This is one of the good ones. Supreme Court stays lower court ruling allowing Trump transgender military ban to proceed. U.S. District Judge Benjamin Steele issued a preliminary injunction in March. Yep. So SCOTUS upheld Trump's transgender military ban. So hell yeah. Start getting the U.S. military back to what it's supposed to be, a purely defensive force, not some social experiment where we can let, trannies and just everybody just serve willy-nilly. I'm sorry, not sorry, but no. Shout out to Fox News, by the way. The Supreme Court on Tuesday sided with with the Trump administration in lifting a lower court order that paused the Pentagon's transgender military ban from taking effect, allowing Trump's order and related policies to proceed, at least. The High Court ruling is a near-term victory for the White House, even as it did not address the underlying merits of the case or President Trump's January 27th executive order banning transgender service members from the U.S. military. Look, if you're like a trans person and you're patriotic and you love the country and you want to serve, I understand where you're coming from, but sorry, the military is not the place for you. It's just not. We cannot expect the military apparatus to make leeway specifically for someone with your condition. You know what I mean? Like we can't. Like the military is not the place for that kind of stuff. It's just not. Sorry, not sorry. Justices Sonia Sotomayor, Elena Kagan, and Ketanji Brown Jackson would have denied the administration's appeal and kept the lower court injunction in place. All women, all libs. Everybody else seems to have voted. The other six seem to have voted with Trump. At issue with the suit, Schilling versus United States is Trump's executive order banning transgender military members. The executive order would require the Defense Department to update its guidance regarding trans-identifying medical standards for military service and to rescind guidance inconsistent with military readiness. Essentially, that means that, trans people require way too much medical attention in order to be the military has to be ready to go at the drop of a hat. You know what I mean? And you could say, well, as long as I've got all my hormones and stuff, I'm still ready. It doesn't matter. Like especially if you had bottom surgery and you've got like all the issues that are like that's associated with all that stuff. Like it's not. It wouldn't work. No. The Trump administration has argued that further stalling the policy could pose a threat to U.S. military readiness, concerns it outlined in the Supreme Court in a filing late last month. Quote, absent to stay, the district court's universal injunction will remain in place for the duration of further review in the Ninth Circuit Court and in this court, a period far too long for the military to be forced to maintain a policy that it has determined in its professional judgment to be contrary to military readiness and the nation's interests. U.S. Solicitor General John Sauer told the court, urging justices to grant the stay. Trump officials have argued that the transgender military policy, quote, furthers the government's important interest in military readiness, unit cohesion, good order and discipline, and avoiding disproportionate costs. Yes, obviously the trans people would have much higher medical costs than a person who's not going through all that stuff. The case was immediately challenged in federal court. 7 transgender military members brought suit against the administration in Seattle-based federal court and in Washington, D.C., where U.S. District Judge Anna Reyes grilled lawyers for the Trump administration in a dizzying line of questions that invoked shelters, Jesus, and Miss Pac-Man, among other things, for asking the government to push its planned implementation deadline. That decision was later overturned by the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. In the Seattle case, plaintiffs argued that the executive order turns away transgender military members and kicks them out for no legitimate reason. No, there is a legitimate reason. If you are on hormone replacement therapy, unless it's something like, you're a lifer and maybe you've been, you're not at retirement age, you're still active duty and you want to stay, so you get TRT. You're like a male and you get TRT. Like that's, that's that's a legitimate reason to be having like any kind of HRT and still be an active duty military member. You know, quote, rather it basically declares all transgender people unfit to serve, insults and demeans them, and cruelly describes every one of them as incapable of an honorable, truthful, and disciplined lifestyle, even in one's personal life, based solely because they are transgender. It continued. It doesn't infer all that. This is purely about readiness and medical costs. I mean, all that stuff is true. I've never met a trans person who I think could serve properly. I haven't. Every trans person I've ever met has been not only prone to a lot of medical issues physically, but also a lot of them are just mentally ill. And I'm not even saying that transgenderism is a mental illness. I mean, I do think it is, but like taking the transgenderism, like taking like the gender dysmorphia or gender dysphoria, whatever the term is, setting that aside, they also tend to be high anxiety or on the autism spectrum or all these other issues that have no place in a strong military apparatus. U.S. District Judge Benjamin Steele issued a preliminary injunction in March that blocked the administration from identifying and removing transgender service members as the suit worked its way through the lower courts. In his opinion granting the injunction, Settle, not Seattle, Jesus Christ. I said Steele earlier, I think. Settle characterized the ban as blanket prohibition on transgender service. It is, and it should be. Settle found the plaintiffs would likely succeed on the merits of their equal protection, First Amendment, and procedural due process claims, among others. Should people suffering from schizophrenia be allowed to serve? What about a guy like missing a leg? Not like he lost it in combat, so he stays in the military in some other like capacity, but somebody who just like because of a birth defect has like one of their arms is all fucked up or they were born without an arm. Should they be allowed to serve just because? This isn't, Starship Troopers where we are kind of required to find the spot for you. No, this is the modern day where we need the best and the best of the best to serve. Quote, the government's argument is not persuasive, and it is not an especially close question on this record, Settle wrote. Settle wrote in his order that the injunction was to, quote, maintain the status quo of military policy regarding both active duty and prospective transgender service that were in place prior to Trump's January 27th executive order. The administration quickly appealed the order to the Ninth Circuit, requesting the appellate court stay Settle's order. The administration argued in court filings that the policy furthers the government's important interest in military readiness, unit cohesion, good order and discipline, and avoiding disproportionate costs. Pretty sure I just read that a second ago. A three-judge panel composed of judges Atsushi Wallace Tashima, a Clinton appointee, John B. Owens, an Obama appointee, and Rupali H. Desai, a Biden appointee. God, 3 liberal judges. Holy shit. Denied the administration's request for a stay on March 31st, which was overturned by the Supreme Court ruling on Tuesday. Quote, the Department of Justice has vigorously defended President Trump's executive actions, including the prioritizing military excellence and readiness executive order, and will continue to do so, the Justice Department official told Fox News Digital at the time. Schilling versus United States is just one of several suits challenging the Trump administration's military ban. It comes as Trump has used his early days in office to undo major Biden-era policies, including their efforts to promote a diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI agenda. So yeah, SCOTUS did it good. SCOTUS did a good. Good job, SCOTUS. This lady down here, this is Judge Ana Reyes. She looks like a liberal judge, doesn't she? She's got that look about her. But anyway, like I said, I think this is a good thing. You know, this is good for the military. It's good for unit cohesion. It's just good across the board. Whatever. I'm very much a live and let live type of person. If you're a consenting adult and you want to fucking mutilate yourself and fuck your hormones up, be my guest. But you're not going to serve in the military that I pay for with my tax dollars. At least not if I had my way. Anyway, if you agree, be sure to let me know in the comments below. Or if you disagree and you think I'm a horrible, hateful bigot, whatever, be sure to let me know. Make sure to smash the like button and sub to the channel, and follow the links in the description to sub to all my alternate channels, and make sure you follow me on X as well. You know, all that good stuff. Throw me a bone.